coming and listening to my little spiel. So I wanted to talk a little bit about effective communication with parents. So in my master's program, I'm supposed to pick kind of a topic to research and something applicable into the classroom. And I've been doing a lot of this year, it feels like, and so I thought that would be a good topic of conversation to bring up because, yeah, communication is so important, and sometimes it's hard to do it effectively. So I did some research, and these are my findings. So first of all, what is it? So keeping the parents in the loop with their child's progress in the classroom. Why is it important? Well, first of all, we want to make sure that we're avoiding surprises. We have seen that in our school before, I'm sure, in our classrooms of, feeling as though, we don't want to overshare things that are happening in the classroom and then the effects that might happen with the parents when they suddenly are like, oh, I had no idea any of this was even happening. So we want to avoid that. We also want to increase good behavior in the classroom. Studies show that when parents are involved with teachers in cooperating, it coincides with a rise in classroom misbehavior. Or when they don't have it, it causes misbehavior. But when you connect, then there's better behavior in the classrooms. So some common challenges that happen is mistaking dismissal behavior for kindness. So it's so easy. We don't want to have that conversation with a parent, especially after school. They're like, hey, how's my child doing? And just being like, oh, they're doing really, really well, because you don't really want to have that uncomfortable conversation. So it's important to not do that. And because that's a common challenge is we dismiss it and we think that it's being kind to the parent, but really it's not effective. Secondly, timing of communication, we'll talk about that in just a minute, but the timing in which we communicate with them about a specific issue is very important. And then another challenge can be uninterested parents, so parents that, it's hard to get a hold of them, they don't really care, they're kind of just dropping their kid off and they relay that responsibility onto the teacher. That can be a challenge as well. So the end goal of effective communication is teamworking with the parents to best support the students. And for the most part, you're going to have parents that obviously want that for their child as well. So kind of leaning into that and having those productive conversations with them. So let's talk about the how. First of all, being straightforward in communicating with especially the hard topics, because we don't want to beat around the bush, again, thinking that it's kindness, because in the end it can cause confusion. So if we're talking to these parents and then if we're talking to them and we're kind of beating around the bush, they might not realize the extent of the challenge that is happening in the classroom. And so then eventually, if it progresses and gets worse in the classroom, then the parents are going to be thrown for a loop. So that's that surprise we were talking about before we don't want to have. We also want to find out the most productive form of communication for the parent, because not all parents communicate the same. We have all seen the parents that respond to the email the day of, and the parents that you have to send the reminder email a couple days later because they don't respond. I like to send a paper with my parents and ask them, hey, what's the best form? Do you prefer text or calls or emails? So that we can have more effective communication, as we've been saying. So the next thing is constant communication with the more challenging students. I think it's very important to communicate with all of the parents, but of course those that are posing a challenge, talking with them on a regular basis and just kind of updating them on their progress, good or bad. You don't want to reward a good day for a bad student always. I feel like I struggle with if a child who's being bad does what's expected of them, I praise them, and that can be very tricky because you don't want to do that. You don't want to reward expectant behavior from students. It's not really fair in the classroom setting. Communicating with parents that have more challenging students regularly. Again, avoiding surprises. Most parents have the same motivation to help the child succeed. You don't want to communicate too late about a situation, so you want to hit that sweet spot. When they're coming to pick up their child and they're asking you those questions, you're not going to be like, actually, it was horrible today, and here are all the reasons why. We don't want to do that, obviously. But we also don't want to wait too late, because if, you don't send that email until about 8 o'clock that night, you've missed that window that they could have had that conversation with their child before them going to bed, and then the next morning, those reminders. If we hit that sweet spot, it's way more effective in the translation that it happens into the classroom. So we want to make sure that we're keeping the parents in the loop from the very beginning. And my conclusion, I just wanted to do like a biblical application. So Proverbs 22:6 says, "Start children off on the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it." We are privileged to be in a setting where we have a Christian campus, and so we're able to talk about the Lord. A lot of places don't have that opportunity, so we should really lean into that. The way that we handle the misbehaviors in the classroom can have really long-term effects in the student, for good or for bad. And since we are able to advocate and be ambassadors for the Lord through our campus, we should really kind of pray about it and really try to look for those opportunities, because it's so easy, especially with the challenging ones, to be like, okay, we just need to move on. We don't have time for this. So try and make sure we're leaning into that. And then I just have some citations. And actually, one of the citations is the book that Mrs. Dobbs gave us last year. What is it called again? The Classroom Management Way, 10 Years of Writing from the Top Classroom Management. So that whole thing. There's so much good. And I know that most of us have that book. If you don't have it, you should get it, because it's super, super helpful. And there's a lot of really awesome tips that I actually pulled from to make this presentation. So thank you. That's it.
Very good.
Thank you.